Today's lecture is on characteristics of Indian rural society, differences and relationship between rural and urban societies. Introduction. Village is the oldest permanent community of men. All early communities were basically rural in character. Bogardus says, human society has been cradled in the rural group. The rural community simply means a community that consists of people living in a limited physical area and who have common interests and common ways of satisfying them. India is a land of villages. In fact, villages form the units of rural society in India. The village social life has its own peculiar characteristics. Usually, a village has less than 5,000 individuals. Mahatma Gandhi's view that India lives in villages still holds true, at least from the demographic point of view. Agriculture is the main occupation of the Indians, and majority of the people in India live in the villages. In this chapter, we shall examine the characteristics of Indian rural society and observe the differences and relationship between rural and urban societies. Important characteristics of Indian rural society. Reddy has stated the following as the characteristics of Indian rural society. Number 1. The village is the unit of rural society. Its people carry on the business of living together with a distinctive framework of caste and social custom. Caste is a dominant social institution permeating social and economic relations. Traditional caste occupation mostly prevails. Cooperative labor of different castes is required not only for agro-economic activities but also for socio-religious life. The large village have within its population all the occupational castes, have a comparatively more integrated and self-sufficient economic as well as socio-religious life than smaller villages. Number 2. The village as a social and cultural unit possesses a basically uniform organization and structure of values all over India. Many problems are common to the entire Indian countryside. Number 3. The ethnic, linguistic, religious and caste composition of a village largely determines its character and structure. Some villages of hamlets are inhabited almost exclusively by certain castes, as in the case of Agraharams for the Brahmins. Even in a village with mixed population, the different castes usually live in different sections of the same village. Inter-caste rivalries are present. Number 4. Women do not have full equality with men in several aspects of life. Number 5. Indian rural society is predominantly based on agriculture. Possession of land carries with it social and prestige value, besides being considered as an economic asset. In many villages, the land is mostly distributed between two or more castes, or among a few families, or between one big landowner and the rest of the community. Landless laborers and tenants constitute a considerable part of the population depending on agriculture. Number 6. Every village has its own organizational setup, authority and sanctions. It has its growing body, the panchayat, based on local tradition since long, but now constituted on a regular basis according to provisions of Panchayat Raj. Number 7. Social distance or isolation has a bearing on the nature of the organization of a village and of its view on the world. Availability of or nearness to modern means of transport or communication also modifies the setting and the fabric of a village. Number 8. Village settlements are generally governed by certain regional and local traditions. The layout of a village, construction of the house, the dress, the speech and the manners follow the set pattern of the cultural area. Each village possesses an individual of its own. Some have a reputation for generosity, hospitality and fair play, while others are notorious for their meanness and corruption. Some villages are known for their cooperatives, while some are noted for their litigations and factions. The important characteristics of the Indian villager was summarized by Reddy as hospitality, feminism, traditionalism, fatalism, religiousness often combined with superstitious beliefs, leisure, attitude to life and low standard of living. Nevertheless, most villagers are capable to change and will respond to the teachers whom they trust, even though their past sad experiences make them conservative and helpless about the future. They are eager to learn how to help themselves and they represent paternalism. Rural-urban differences and relationships. Environment affects human life to a greater extent. Human beings live in two different environments of rural and urban. Since there is difference in social life in both environments, it is of interest to know the differences. Further, extension workers are concerned themselves to rural environment. They must be in a position to differentiate the rural from the urban environment. While comparing and contrasting, it has to be kept in mind that both the societies are the part of one human society. As a result of development, one particular society assumes the name of rural society while the other becomes urban society. The two societies are basically the same. The difference that exists between the two is of theoretical and academic than the real. We can observe the differences between the two societies by taking into account some of the parameters or criteria. Number 1. Occupation. While the rural society mainly consists of cultivators, majority of the people in the urban society engages in non-agricultural occupations such as manufacturing, trade, commerce and professional services, etc. Number 2. Environment. Rural society leads life in direct relationship with the nature. In contrast, in urban societies, we find predominance of man-made environment and leads life in greater isolation from nature. Number 3. Size of community. Rurality, size of community are not correlated, whereas urbanity and size of community is positively correlated. Number 4, heterogeneity and homogeneity of population. This refers to similarity in socio-psychological and other characteristics of population such as behavior, belief and language, etc. In this context, we find more homogeneity in the rural society and more heterogeneity in urban society, especially in metro cities. Number 5, culture. Rural society tends to be quite conservative and tradition bound, and they are guided by superstitions and age-old customs. They do not accept importance of scientific functions, whereas urban society is free from conservation and tradition as well as free from superstitions and customs. They are influenced by the scientific inventions which bring about changes in everyday life. Number 6, social stratification. Social stratification refers to a system by which a society ranks categories of people in a hierarchy. It determines the status and role of individuals or differentiation or certain persons as superior to others. In this context, rural society has the traditional system of stratifications based on birth or caste. On the other hand, urban society is divided into different strata on the basis of economic, social, political, educational and other factors. It changes with the changes in values. Take for instance, a person who is rich now may become poor tomorrow. So, the status shall change. Number 7, social mobility. In rural society, social mobility is less. People do not change their place, occupation, religion and political view, etc. Wards generally carry the occupation of parents and social status thus remains more or less the same. Moreover, occupation is determined by tradition and custom. In the case of urban society, we witness greater degree of social mobility. Moreover, occupation of wards is not necessarily that of the parents. Occupation differs according to skill. Number 8, systems of interaction. In rural society, there is less contact per man on account of narrow area of interaction. At the same time, the contacts are primary in nature and predominance of personal and relatively durable relations. Further, in rural society, we find comparatively simple and sincere relations. In the case of urban society, there are numerous secondary contacts on account of wide area of contact. Such contacts are predominantly impersonal, casual and short-lived. Further, we witness greater complexity, superficiality and standardized formality of relations. Number 9, social control. In rural society, social control is informal on account of size of the community. It is the primary institutions like family and neighborhood that control life and the society. In urban society, social control is more formal. Primary institutions have social control. There are secondary institutions like economic and other institutions that control social life. Number 10, social change. In rural society, as there is less competition compared to the urban society, the process of social change take place at a very slow rate. Number 11. Social tolerance and family domination. In rural society, as people do not face new situations frequently, there is greater degree of tolerance as compared to the urban society. In other words, in the rural society, there is cultural uniformity and lack of variety in terms of caste and religions. Further, family is the most dominant institution. Urban societies are less tolerant as people often face new situations. Cultural variety can be seen in these societies. Moreover, apart from family, other institutions such as economy dominates. Number 12. Status of women. In rural society, status of women is inferior to men. Their role is confined to house and live with serious restrictions. In other words, they do not enjoy full freedom. On the other hand, in urban society, status of women is on par with men. They are comparatively free to take part in outdoor activities and enjoy greater degree of freedom as compared to their rural counterparts. Number 13. Neighborhood environment. Rural life is based on cooperation and mutual goodwill. As a result, neighborhood is important. Neighborhood generally consists of same caste and economic status. That is why a good deal of cooperation and brotherhood bond is seen. In urban society, people have fairly convenient life. People belong to different communities, castes and places, and so the institution of neighborhood is not important. Sorokin and Zimmerman have summed the above differences as rural community is similar to calm water in a pail and urban life is like the boiling water in a kettle. However, it has to be noted that there are many limitations in differentiating between the two societies. Some of the limitations in differentiation are: number 1, there are no demarcation where urban, that is city, ends and rural begins. Number 2, the parameters or criteria said above are not quantitative. Number 3, changing characters create problems. The solidarity, belongingness, etc. are now reduced in rural areas. Due to communication of new ideas and extension facilities to rural areas, the gap between rural and urban is now being narrowed down. However, the complete closure of this gap will not be possible even when the process of globalization has swept over India. Conclusion. Rural and urban societies are two distinct realities in India. While comparing and contrasting, it has to be kept in mind that both the societies are the part of one human society. As a result of development, one particular society assumes the name of the rural society while the other becomes urban society. Moreover, the Indian rural society has undergone considerable change in the recent past, particularly since the independence as a result of a series of land reform legislations that have accelerated the pace of this change. However, village or rural life continues to be important facet of India. The rural social life has its own peculiar characteristics and its norms strengthen the authoritarian and hierarchical norms in administration.